Hello, I'm Whitney, and this is our new parent panel called It's a Smalls World. And we are a collection of the parents. Some of us, all of us are at WDWNT, but we have kids from our ages are all across the board, from baby to kids in their 20s. And we have all traveled with our kids to Disneyland and Walt Disney World. So we can answer any of your questions that you may have about traveling to the parks. And we actually have a pretty big list of questions to go through this evening. So I'm looking forward to answering those for you guys. So with me, I have my husband, Michael.
Hi, good evening.
And then we also have Jason, Rich, Ron, and Laurel. And we have Rich's daughter, Kelly, as well. So I will start with our kids' ages. We've been taking our kids we started Disney World when they were each 3 months old. And we've gone just about every year since with them. And we just got back from our first trip to Disneyland with a 5 and a 7 year old. So those are our credentials.
I guess
Okay,
we'll
I'll go next. Oh, go
Yeah,
ahead, Ron.
y'all
That's
go.
fine.
I guess we're kind of the newer parents here. This is Andy. She's 14 months now. Her first trip to Disneyland, she was about 6 months old. First trip to Disney World was about 8 or 9 months, and she did a Disney cruise at a year.
Mm-hmm.
So I have two kids, 15 and 12. We've been going to Walt Disney World with them since before they were born. So fair amount of experience with kids of many ages.
We have four kids. Currently, they range from 31 to 23. How old is Noah?
22.
22.
Noah's
Yeah,
22.
I can't keep track. And we've had friends and relatives in Florida for decades. So for a very long time, the entire family would pack up every summer and go down to Florida. And on many of those occasions, we, of course, had to stop at Disney World because it was on the way. And that probably goes back to the early 90s, I would say. The kids, the older two were probably in their single digits, 6, 7, 8. I think Kelly's first trip was probably closer to when you were in like second or third grade. It all kind of mushes together, but it's been quite a while, quite a few trips.
Awesome.
All right, Whitney, why don't you go through your list of questions,
All right.
and I'll keep an eye on the chat as well.
All right. So our first question that we got is, and I don't feel like we're a good group to answer this because it sounds like we all started them as babies.
Yeah.
But what is a good age for your child's first trip?
Not 2.5 months old.
Well, actually,
No.
Ron went to the parks with his 6-week-old niece
Yeah.
when she was a baby. I
Oh,
mean, would
wow.
you
So he's
say
got
as
to
a teen
be.
at the time that was a difficulty?
Um, I think the toddler, my nieces at the time were 6 weeks and 16 months. So the 16 month was the harder one at that point. But a lot of people say don't go till the kids can remember it. I'll always disagree with that because those
Hmm.
early trips are not really for the kids' memories; they're for yours.
Hmm.
And
Exactly.
the other big thing is don't forget they're always going to be free until they're three.
Yep.
Hmm.
I
Take advantage.
Yeah, when we
Very true.
advise people on their
Uh,
trips, a lot of times we just say, what are you going to get out of the trip? You're the one that's paying. If your child is young, it's really about what you want out of that trip. And a lot of times that helps them make their decision.
Mm-hmm.
I think
And
Rory,
I'll
when
also
we had,
say, go ahead.
I was going to say, so when Rory, we took her for her third birthday and we had her party at Cindy's royal table. She still talks about that to this day, in that experience, the getting the face painted that day as well. So that to us was when we noticed that she actually remembered, started little bits and pieces of the trips that she did was at 3.
I think toddlers can probably remember more than you think they will. So I don't think, personally, we don't think there's an age that's too young to start.
Yeah.
I will say,
if
you're worried about taking kids and them not remembering it, that's one thing. If you're worried about you not having a good time because you have to deal with the kid, I can definitely say that walking around a park in July and August is not the best thing. But on the other hand, a cruise is spectacular. So we took a cruise when my oldest daughter was 11 months. She actually learned to walk on the cruise ship. And that was a great experience. She was a great age. We took some baby food, but she started eating table food, which means she could have pretty much anything off the menu. Cruises, kids that young are essentially free, but you have to pay port charges. So that's a good option for people that are worried about going to the parks with a young kid.
And that young, it's also, I think, a little easier than I think she'd be now, even now, because when they're under a year and they're not really moving on their own, they are essentially a piece of luggage you're taking to the park in a certain sense, that they're just staying in the strollers. You don't have to look after them running around, and it is a little easier on that part.
Yeah. I think if your child is not walking, in some ways, just like what Ron was saying, it's way easier. If you have your own travel system with your baby carriage and everything, and if you have like your own process, and honestly, it's just like any other day, except a bunch of extra walking. I think the difficulty could be when you're dealing with transportation. But then, I would say, at Disneyland, super easy. Disney World, you have to think about it. But if you're on the cruise, like super duper easy. I think even having her at 1 and crawling all over the ship, really, really not at all.
I was going to say, I think, and this will probably be the answer to start each one of these questions, and that is, it depends. In this case, you guys said, it depends on you when they're very, very small. How much do you want to carry with you? How many diaper bags, does it take to support a kid for an entire day walking around a park? As they get older, it's more about how are they? Are they willing to walk? Are they willing to stand in lines? Are they okay with kind of waiting around and not doing anything while you wait for your fast pass to come up and that sort of thing? It runs the spectrum. I mean, I think we were somewhat lucky in that we made a lot of day trips to start with because we had friends and relatives in the area and we could just pop in and pop out. And then you don't have to worry about, the whole resort addition to the schedule. But it really depends. I mean, can you handle your toddler? Can your toddler handle you at Disney? That's the question. And if you can do that near home, go on a nature hike for an hour, they'll be fine. So it probably depends.
Well, and the good thing about Walt Disney World also is they have a baby care center in every single park you go to. And so if you don't want to lug around or if you don't want to travel with a bunch of their stuff, the good news is there's always stuff to buy in the baby care centers. They have diapers, baby food, baby medicine. I mean, anything you could possibly need for your infant, you're pretty much guaranteed to find it there.
And the most abundant changing tables of anywhere I've ever been.
Very true. Changing tables in every bathroom.
They're cleaned in between every use. I worked at one. They're cleaned every time anyone uses them. You clean the changing tables, and the prices in baby care aren't marked up. They're not Disney price. They're real life price.
Yeah, the only place that I ever would even say remotely we had any issues was maybe at Epcot, just because once you're in the World Showcase, like there are large bathrooms in certain countries. So you do have to really know where you're at and then know your child's schedule. I think we already knew that we were going to have to change diapers at this point. It didn't matter. So
All right, so I think that kind of segues us into our second question because somebody mentioned strollers. So, do you rent a stroller or do you bring your own? We always bring our own.
I'd say don't rent just for the cost. I mean, it's expensive to rent a stroller.
I agree.
And
I think it's about
if you're on an airplane,
I was about to say that
if you're flying, yeah, I mean, it doesn't cost you to check the stroller. And then you have it in the airport, you have it at the resort. That's the biggest problem with renting a stroller, is just like renting a wheelchair, is that if you need it outside of the parks, you don't have it.
Yep.
Right.
And I think the biggest thing to rent a stroller is if you're not using it at home, like your kids 5 or 6, you're not going to use them at home as much, but you might need them in the parks because the kids are not going to be used to walking as much. Maybe that would be the point where we would suggest recommending or suggest renting one. But even then, you could rent from one of the off-site places. There's Kingdom strollers. There's Apple. I don't know. I can't remember offhand which ones are allowed to deliver to the resorts.
There's a number of them. Yeah.
Without you being there anymore. Disney just restricted that in the last few months. But they could drop it off at Bell Services, and you could pick it up, and it's much cheaper per day, and that way you have it for around the resort and getting on and off transportation, which all can accommodate strollers as well.
Yeah, I think no matter what, you're really going to want it if you're staying at a Disney resort, just because most of the resorts are huge. If you're staying in an area that's way far away from whatever your primary clubhouse is, or where the restaurants are, or even where the transportation hub is, you're really going to want it anyway. And a lot of people probably talk about the stroller collapse process on the bus system. Technically, have we even really encountered that yet?
We haven't done the buses yet.
We always somehow find ways to bypass it. I eventually, though, when we get to the point where we're not carrying extra baby bags and things like that, when we just have our basic stroller and a backpack, it's much easier to collapse and get on the bus. But if you're having to deal with a bunch of extra things, again, we always found alternative methods.
And I know there's a lot of people who say if you have access to a car, when you get there, just go down to Target or Walmart and buy a foldable umbrella stroller. That's going to be cheaper than 2 or 3 days of renting one, and do it that way. So that's another recommendation for that, especially if you have the ability to do it, or you can have Amazon ship.
So I was going to say, in fact, one of the last trips we did, we had the Mickey and Minnie folding umbrella strollers, and we actually just ended up leaving it there just for someone else to have. We didn't want to take it back with us on the airplane. But what I was going to say to someone else's point was that, if you're taking your stroller for the first time to Walt Disney World and you're riding the buses around, I would make sure you've got good practice in folding that stroller up and down, because you're not going to have much time to get that stroller up and into the bus before someone's trying to shove you out of the way, standing. Yeah, I want to get on the bus. You're holding up the line, so.
And they do go around you while you're trying to collapse your stroller.
Yeah.
My stroller
And if you are worried,
it's really easy to fold.
20 years. Sorry. So my stroller knowledge is 20 years old, so I'm not sure how current it is. But one of my recollections is carrying the kids around on my shoulders, which was actually kind of a neat, father child experience in and of itself, and a good workout.
For sure.
And if you're worried about buying one of those like the cheap umbrellas and it just being wasted and garbage when you're done, they don't just throw them out. They do go to what's called property control, where cast members could buy them at a discount and have them for things like that. So so they don't just get thrown out. So they do get recycled.
Awesome.
All right, so speaking of resorts, we got a couple questions about what is the best resort for the price and what resort is best for kids. And somebody asked about Art of Animation too, which we stayed at in September. And if you're not in a suite at Art of Animation, I would not suggest staying there because the walk from the Little Mermaid rooms to the Skyliner and the lobby is a very, very long walk. And there's no convenient route to getting there with kids.
Yeah, I think for the money, the best resorts are usually going to be in the moderates. And now with the Skyliner access, I'd say Caribbean Beach because your kids with a certain age group, probably starting at about 2 to 10, they're going to need that nap in the middle of the day where they can't just do it in a stroller all the time. So having that transportation to be able to get back in the middle of the day is going to be key. And all the other moderates are only bus transportation at this point.
And a lot of strollers do fit easily into the Skyliner compartments. You don't have to fold them down completely. It depends on your stroller, obviously, so you'll want to check the parameters on that, obviously, before you try to get in your first one. But so like the double wide ones aren't going to fit. You're going to have to collapse it. But if you have a vertical one, even if it's got 2 spots, it should, for the most part, fit if you have an American stroller.
We usually stayed in the Pop because Art of Animation wasn't built yet when the kids were smaller, and we started with like one room and a blow-up bed, and eventually graduated to adjoining rooms, which is sort of like a suite. 2 bathrooms, 2 sets of beds, and that actually works fairly well. The past several trips, we've stayed in a cabin at Fort Wilderness, which only has 1 bathroom, but access to comfort stations and a different sleeping arrangement. But there's a lot of choices depending, are you a close family? Are you a family that the kids need to spread out, or the parents need to spread out, as the case may be? There's a lot of choices. Off property, we've stayed at the Hilton Palace, which has really large suites for the same or less money as a Disney onesie room, and Town Place Suites, which is at the other end of Walt Disney World, out by Western Way, which a 2-bedroom there, which has a pull-out bed and 2 large bedrooms, is always a good deal. I don't know if that'll continue now that Flamingo Crossing is being built up, but when we were going, that was a good thing, good spot.
And there are also
bought into
specific
DVC. We bought into DVC before our kids were born, so obviously a DVC 1-bedroom, especially in Old Key West where it's enormous, works very well for kids too.
And as I was saying, there are specific resorts that sleep 5, and usually that is either a sleeper chair or a kind of a Murphy bed that comes out from under the TV. They do have those in the moderates. I don't believe any of the values have those. Most of the deluxes have some accommodations that will sleep 5. But the one thing yes, definitely the Port Orleans have them. I don't know about all of Caribbean Beach. The one thing I will, they have,
Now,
I don't know
All-Star
the rooms.
Suites. All-Star has suites, family suites that you can stay in. That'll sleep back.
Yeah. Rich touched on something very interesting, which I just wanted to comment on. A lot of what you commented on was really about what works for your family in that particular time frame. And is your family very close knit, or do your family members need extra space in the evenings, or do you know already that you're going to need 2 bathrooms because you have a lot of family members that just need that? those are definitely things to consider when you're looking at family suites or different kinds of adjoining room options. I think for me, our family was always super tight knit. I mean, like super duper unusually close with several like sisters and a mom and dad. So when we would go and we would stay in a single room with two beds and we'd all pile up, that's just how we lived. But I know many families who don't live that way. And just like what you said, Rich, an adjoining room probably is the best option because it gives you the most space and obviously the most, amenities. But there obviously are alternatives, beyond that.
One thing with that is Disney will never guarantee adjoining rooms. You could request them, and they will do their best. I've never heard complaints about people not getting them or getting moved to them. But that is, they will always say it is not a guarantee if you request it.
Right.
Yeah, we were pretty lucky and consistent in getting the adjoining rooms, but times change, kids change, the family changes. As we got older, I think the kids actually preferred to have a room a little further away, a little bit down the hall. So it changes. Like we were both saying, it depends on the family. Our family is not a everybody piled together family. Picture an albatross with a 6-foot wingspan per bed. That's kind of our paradigm, I think.
All right. So
One of the things we stay at a lot is the Orange Lake. They have up to 3 bedrooms at a very reasonable price. It is a timeshare thing, which is what we stay there with Laurel's family's timeshare, but the prices are really reasonable with really spacious rooms that could sleep a large family easily, and they have good pools and good facilities there as well.
Yeah, I've stayed at Orange Lake too. It's nice, definitely. I mean, pretty much a lot of the timeshares around Orlando are fairly nice. I mean, there's so many of them that the poor ones don't really survive. But Orange Lake is nice, and a lot of the other ones are nice too. I've stayed at a fair number of timeshares all around Walt Disney World.
So if you guys had to choose a family resort that you would think is best or that your favorite has been with your kids, what would you choose?
If we
Old Key West.
Old Key West?
Old Key West is a good one.
Yeah, definitely. Old Key West and Saratoga have large rooms, lots of light. We have not yet stayed there. That's on the list. But if you're not DVC, we really liked either the pop rooms together or the cabin.
As a kid, the cabins were my favorite, for sure.
Yeah. Those look really fun. That's on our list too.
Mm-hmm.
Animal Kingdom Lodge is one I would recommend just because of the amount of activities you have there that could be very kid-focused with the little, like, where they have the animal experts and the cultural experts talking about all the stuff there. You've got good access to food, good access to multiple pools, and it's on the lower end of the deluxes, so you still have you're not paying the monorail or Crescent Lake rates, and you get a decent sized room with all the deluxe amenities that are there.
And if you get a Savannah view, you get to have entertainment with all of the animals, which, again, depending on the age of your kids, they might remember that more than any of the things they do in Magic Kingdom.
Very true.
Very true.
I think we would probably Coronado Springs. That's always been our go-to resort. The rooms, especially a tip from us is if you're traveling with a baby, the bathrooms separate from the room. You have this big, thick wood door. And so we would put his pack and play into the bathroom and shut the door, and it was super dark and he couldn't hear a thing. So that was always our go-to resort for our kids was Coronado Springs.
The only other one I'd recommend is Yacht and Beach Club for the pool. If your kids are the kind that are going to spend hours at the pool every day, you really can't beat the pool at Yacht and Beach Club.
Very true. That was my favorite as a teenager, was going to that pool, having the sand on the bottom.
I'm glad you mentioned that. Different resorts for different age groups, I think, is kind of important to think about. Just because I think if you have tiny little ones, you may or may not want to spend the extra surplus that you would at a deluxe. But if you have older ones that you think are going to have some really positive memories, specifically in that environment, it might be worth it for your family.
And you never
Yes, and
know. I
someone.
mean,
Sorry, go ahead.
sorry. I was going to just say, you never know. Going back to my childhood, a very long time ago, we stayed at the La Quinta Motor Inn, which was almost all alone on 192 in those days. And my recollection, my strongest memory, is of playing the helicopter arcade game in the game room at the hotel. So
Oh boy.
you never know.
Yeah, most of my childhood memories are the old Contemporary Food and Fun Center, which is the Wave now, is what used to be the best arcade on property. Because I
Yep.
mean, there were only the two resorts when I was a kid too.
I was gonna say someone in
Yeah,
the
we ended up at the
chat
Polynesian all the time.
brought up that beach and yacht club are great locations because they're in the middle of everything, and that's true too. You can just walk to Epcot from beach and yacht club, and that's an extra level of convenience if you have teenagers or little kids, skipping the buses and other modes of transportation, which I guess also rings true for any of the monorail resorts.
Mm-hmm.
One thing with the yacht and beach, I'll say, and Coronado as well. One thing is this convention resorts might have a little rowdier bars in the lobby areas at night.
Mm-hmm.
If that's a concern for you, that's something to say. But it's not. I've never seen major problems with that.
Yeah.
But I know some people have said that, particularly at Coronado, that kind of convention atmosphere can sometimes not work with kids.
We stayed at a room not too far from the clubhouse area, and I didn't really notice anything. It seemed fine. But yeah, it's true. That could be something of a concern.
All right, so let's move into our next question. And it's been a long time since I've done this, so I don't remember very well. But so it's a two-part question. What rides can you hold an infant on? And what are the rules for baby wearing infants on rides?
Mm.
Uh,
Well, I'm the one that generally wore the baby. I have like T-Rex arms, so I just couldn't hold her for however many hours, just going in and out of lines and getting her in and out. So I oftentimes, even at 7 months, and then at 10 months, and then even at the 12 months when we were on the ship, I would wear her, even though she's so heavy. Um, Now, they do allow you to carry in line. There's no issues with that. You can carry in your carrier in line, not a problem. Depending on the ride, though, they will request that you take your baby out of the carrier, and it does depend on the park. So, for instance, I got a different experience with Pirates at different parks. I think at Disneyland, I had to take her out of the carrier because I remember this because she went down, and I remember the moment of her like going excited. So in the same ride system on Frozen, same thing, we took her out. But on Pirates in the Magic Kingdom, I recall not having to take her out of my carrier. And that may or may not be consistent with what their regulations are. So I always generally just asked. If we were getting close, I said, do I need to remove her? And they'll give you an indicator on whether you can let them sit in your carrier or if they can have to come out and sit on your lap.
the only one I remember her specifically not being allowed on our laps, that she had to be sitting on the bench itself, was Roger Rabbit's cartoon Spin.
Yeah.
They specifically had to make her sit between us on that. She wasn't allowed to be on a lap. And I think that's part of the restraint and how much that ride can spin. We didn't do teacups with her.
Yeah.
But you could bring, as long as there's no height restriction, you could bring a kid on anything that's even like Frozen or Pirates that have the drops. Andy loved those. She actually threw her hands up in the air on the photos. But the height restriction, then you might want to consider things like, with your baby is how the drop's going to be, or how bumpy something like Kilimanjaro's safaris is going to be for your kid. But they'll let them on as long as there's not a height restriction.
And the other thing to think about is noise and water effects. Some babies or smaller children are very sensitive to that. So we've always told people, if you're concerned or if you're not sure if that's a part of your experience in the ride, just ask a cast member before you enter.
Andy's first trip was right after the 4th of July, so we kind of tested her noise tolerance going to local fireworks, and she was completely fine with it. So we decided not to get the ear protective wear, but a lot of our friends' kids did need that, and that's not just for the fireworks, it's on those rides.
Like, for instance, in Pirates, it's a very loud ride, and there are water effects, and there can be smoke effects. So I think for a small child, it can be a little bit jarring. Andy was like, this is amazing. This isn't anything like I've ever been on. So she loved it. But we already anticipated that she would like that sort of thing. So.
While we're on the subject, not specifically which rides you can bring your children on, but Kelly brought up the point that there is baby swap available at many of the rides, where if the group wants to go on the ride, but the younger members of the group either can't or you don't think they would want to, I don't remember exactly how it works, but you can take half the group, go on the ride, and the other half, stays with the baby. And then there's a fast pass like experience where the group that stayed behind can then go on the ride. And that way the toddler, infant, baby, or young child, whatever it is that didn't want to go on the ride, doesn't have to.
And that does allow certain people to ride twice. Like, we had a group of 4 of us with the baby, and Laura would take the baby, and I would ride with my in-laws, and then we would come back and I would take the baby, and all 3 of them could ride again. And that worked out. The baby swap thing is the one thing I think Universal seems to have the advantage over Disney with young children, that they have more of those waiting rooms designed on almost every ride, that have TVs that are usually themed to whatever the property for the ride is, as opposed to just having to wait out in the front at Disney.
Those waiting rooms are also utilized for family members who just don't have the physical capability to actually stand in a line, or anybody who might be on the spectrum or any kind of physical incapabilities to do so, which just adds to the experience of your line, your queuing experience at Universal. The difference at Disney is everybody goes in the line. That's it. That's just the way it works.
All right, so the next question, which is a good one. With kids, do you prefer Walt Disney World or Disneyland? So I'll start. So we have taken our kids the majority of times to Walt Disney World, and we just took them to Disneyland for the first time in March, literally right before they closed. In our 2 days at Disneyland, I think were more fun than the multiple trips we've taken at Disney World. And the reason is because it seemed like the cast members at Disneyland were a lot more engaging with our kids than any of the cast members that we've encountered at Walt Disney World.
We've had, so not to discount, we've had really good experiences. I can think of when I referred to Rory's third birthday and the time after, those were some really good moments. But just to see the looks in our kids' eyes this last trip was, they really enjoyed it. And like Winnie had mentioned, the cast member experience was above and beyond what we would normally experience, I think, from Walt Disney World. So yeah, since this was our first trip this last time, we're a little bit more biased. We're ready to go back since it's a new experience for us. But both parks, they still offer really great experiences. What I personally enjoyed the most about Disneyland was the walking around the characters. Peter Pan was out engaging with our kids. Mad Hatter was having a tea party at the same time. So that was really cool for us to see our kids' experience.
And you can fill up an autograph book very easily in Disneyland. Whereas at Disney World, it feels like, characters don't roam like they do in Disneyland. And it's all very scheduled in Walt Disney World to see characters. So if you're looking for engagement through characters for your kids, our vote is for Disneyland. And like Michael said, that's not to discount our Walt Disney World. I mean, we're still going to take our kids to Walt Disney World, but as far as the magic that happens, we feel like Disneyland kind of wins that side of it for us.
I guess we'll go. I think we both. Okay, first of all, we love Disney World. We'll go to Disney World a million times. There's nothing stopping us. We're gonna go to Disney World. However, there are a number of different factors that make Disneyland so much more convenient and in some ways like a more simple trip when you have smaller children, or even not so small, but middle-aged, middle school level children. The fact that the two parks are right next door to each other, you can literally just walk right over and you're in the other park.
And the same thing with all the hotels and even the offsite hotels.
And downtown
They're
Disney.
all just walking.
Yep. We walked to and from the parks from our offsite hotel every day. Wasn't a big deal. And then you also have so much less walking in general. Even though you're walking to and from the parks themselves physically are much smaller, and they're so jam-packed. I mean, every nook and cranny is filled with magic at Disneyland and in California. And so everywhere you turn, it feels like there's a character, there's a cast member who's bringing some magical bubbles or something. There is a restaurant or a food truck of some sort to eat at. There is a show, an outdoor show, an indoor show, a show under a tent. There's so much going on, and so you don't really have to go that far to get to anything. And the different types of entertainment they have available there are different than Disney World. At Disney World, there aren't as many, air-conditioned shows as maybe what we would like in the heat. They have a lot of different kinds of entertainment in different kinds of temperature-sensitive, environments. And I think in California, it's easier to do that because, they pretty much have the same weather most of the year.
Year-round, yeah.
Right. And I think in Florida, it can be difficult because if you're going during the really hot times of year, then you're constantly having to plan your day around getting into some AC, getting a food reservation. In fact, I don't think the last trip we even we didn't even do any reservations.
No.
And we went during convention.
We did. Disneyland?
Yeah. We didn't do any. We just did all to go. That's it.
You don't have to worry about pre-planning your meals or missing your meals with the kids because there's better food.
Or like pre-planning your fast passes. Because when we had the baby, we honestly weren't even sure if we were going until weeks before because we adopted. And, we had to wait till we finished our 6-month post-study. And we had just finished and we were like, great, we're going. It's happening. And, in terms of magic, we had so many unexpected magical experiences. I mean,
Disney World is always more mad, but the only time I think cast members have ever brought me to tears was at Disneyland. We were getting Andy's first set of ears, and we were asking, we were debating what do we want first trip, or were we going to do an announcement photo, because we weren't allowed to share photos on social media until the adoption was final, which was going to be right after this trip. So we were debating if we want like an adoption hat or the first trip hat, and we're sitting there debating it. And we decide, okay, we're going to go with the first trip hat. And then the cast member puts it on the thing, and she starts going. She goes, excuse me for a minute, walks off, comes back and says, oh, I spoke to my manager. We're going to give you guys the welcome to the family hat on us.
And I'm about to cry. But it was such a moment. And Ron had to leave because he couldn't handle it. But they gave her a Minnie Mouse doll. They gave her the extra ears. And, a couple of months later, we finally had our court date. And lo and behold, it was literally the day we were flying to Disney World. We had to go all the way to Western Mass to go to court that morning and then drive back to Boston to catch our flight down to Orlando that night. So the day we arrived, we were a family. And then when we did our cruise, strangely enough, it just happened to be ironic. Our intent was to go there when she was about 1. And then the day we started our cruise happened to be our gotcha day, the day we met her.
Yeah.
So it just kind of, we've had so many magical Disney moments. But at Disneyland, I feel like the cast members go above and beyond.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Yep, I completely agree with that.
Yeah, although my wife and I have been to Disneyland a few times, it's on the kids to take themselves there now. So it's on their bucket lists.
I would say, in terms of kids, I would do neither. I would do a cruise. A cruise is absolutely the easiest vacation with little kids because you don't have to walk very far to get to anything. The pools are right there. The food is easy. You don't have to worry about reservations. You don't have to worry about fast passes. You don't have to even get off the ship when it pulls into port if you don't want to. And you go to Castaway Cay, and that's like a kid's paradise. So my kids love cruises, and my youngest daughter doesn't really like the parks, but she loves cruises. So if you want the easiest trip for you, a cruise is the way to go.
Actually, we kind of came to that conclusion after this first cruise. It was our first cruise.
Mm-hmm.
I did a cruise when I was like a teenager, but this was the first Disney cruise for both of us and first cruise of our adult life. And taking Andy on that was just so easy.
It's pie. It was cake and pie. And she wasn't walking, which in some ways sort of actually worked out in our advantage. I just let her, but there are pros and cons. I mean, at her age, there was very little activities that were geared towards her age. But to be honest, I just brought her into everything we went to. We didn't feel like she was missing out. We just let her crawl in a corner somewhere and play with a toy. She was fine. She wasn't disturbing anybody. And I think that's the nice thing about the cruise. It is super relaxing, that if you have small children, they could be noisy and loud and boisterous and crazy, and nobody bats an eye. You don't feel like you're affecting. You could go to dinner, like every night we'd go to dinner and we'd sit her in her high chair. And, she'd be so kind of crazy at dinner, honestly. It was sort of still the beginning stages of her starting to eat appropriately without food flying everywhere. And every night I was like, I'm so sorry. We're going to have to take the food off the plate because the plate's about to go flying. And then, so they were like, it's fine. Do what you have to do to feed your child. And then she'd fall asleep right in the pile of food every night. They'd help us clean her up. They kept her safe. They piled up things around her to make sure she would, fall out.
But the second night they realized she was going to fall asleep at the table, even though we had like first dining. So they would bring out extra tablecloths and just board and would put them.
They created like a barrier
so
of
she could fall
tablecloths.
asleep in the high chair.
Yeah, it was kind of, and then it was pretty
cruise
nice.
line cast members are amazing. Mm-hmm. And cruise is also good if you have picky eaters.
Yes.
Because it's not like you go to, Kona Cafe or California Grill with picky eaters and then they either can't find something to eat or they order something but then don't like it. Cruise is just so much easier. There's extensive kids menus. They can order off the adult menu if they want to, or you can go to the nice dinner and then later take the kids to the buffet. Or if they're in the kids club, they can have dinner while they're in the kids club. So, especially for picky eaters, it's so much more convenient.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. And the other thing too is, the buffet is great, but with a small child, a lot of times I would actually go to breakfast by myself because this was the first time in like months that Ron could actually sleep in. So I was like, Ron, you sleep in. Let me take the baby to breakfast. And every morning, because we were on the Wonder, I took her to Triton's and they would serve her. When you don't think about this a whole lot, but if you're by yourself and you're dealing with feeding your child and feeding yourself, they never rushed me. They brought everything to her. She either was or wasn't using a utensil. Even if other families were near us, she wasn't disturbing anybody. And they always, if I asked, because at times it would be a little difficult to find something that I knew for sure she would eat later, I would ask for a croissant to go or a box of Special K. That was our go-to. That way I could have it as a little snacky thing to feed her later. They didn't typically have Special K in that restaurant, but they would go get it for me, give me a couple of boxes to go for the day.
So
Yeah.
on the topic, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to comment. Our kids were older when we went on our first Disney cruise. I don't remember how old they were. Kelly, were you like 10 or so?
I was like 5.
Were you? Oh, so it must
I
have been
was
the older
closer to
ones that
10
were
on
in
the
the other
second
club.
cruise.
Okay. So I will definitely echo that it was easy because especially at the post, toddler age, they just went to their little clubs all day, and us adults could basically do whatever we wanted to do, and the kids were fine and happy and all set. And it was really, really nice. I would agree. Cruises are very nice.
Even with having babies on board, where you still have to pay a premium for the daycare services, we utilized it a few times, but I mean,
It's still cheaper than a babysitter around here.
It is. It's really cheap.
And they're great. They remembered her so much. We would see the same when you're on the Wonder and the Magic, they are smaller crews, so you do end up seeing the same crew members all the time, all over the place. Everywhere we go, Andy was like, they might not have remembered us, but they'd see her and they'd go, Andy Rose, and everywhere we go, people recognized her and remembered her. And I don't know, every time we'd see the same characters over and over again because, the schedule, and they'd remember her. So there was definitely like a lot of experiences where she was very excited to see the same people over and over again. It kind of worked out nicely. You would think that a 1-year-old might not have those kinds of interactions, but we did. So it was definitely worth it.
All right. So we talked about this a little bit, but what do you think, and this is not park specific, so what do you think through the Disneyland or Walt Disney World is the best dining location for younger kids? Do you have a specific one in mind that you've taken your kids to eat?
The one they'll eat the food at.
Yeah.
I was going to say Chef Mickey's, maybe.
That's a good one. Yeah.
As we were saying with Laura was saying about the breakfast buffets on the cruise, one of the things I'll say is if you're looking for like that breakfast, character breakfast, Ohana really works for that because they bring the food to you.
Yes.
I think Akershus has the buffet and they also do the table service. So that's a good one for that, where you don't have to worry about someone sits with the kid while you go get your buffet and swap off. So anything, Garden Grill is another one that does the same thing.
That.
Those are really good for those character meals, particularly for the very little ones.
I agree. Any meal that you don't have to get up and serve yourself or your children, in my opinion, is worth whatever the premium is, because that just adds to the entire enjoyment. You can sit down, you can focus on the time with your children instead of literally worrying about where your child ran off to and are they going to eat. So I think that's the way I would always go.
We love Ohana. That's our favorite for breakfast at Walt Disney World. And Michael will disagree with me here, but food-wise, the Plaza Inn at Disneyland was not good. But we met 11 characters that morning at breakfast.
Yeah, that was amazing.
And it's a variety of characters. We had Minnie Mouse, Max, Captain Hook, Fairy Godmother, Tigger,
Rafiki was there.
Rafiki. I mean, it was.
It's a wide range of characters.
And so for Disneyland, if you're wanting a character meal, I would suggest Plaza Inn for that one.
Yeah. You're not going to get your kids to eat anyways because there's so many characters. So
We just had to go food at Disney.
if it's a buffet and it's loud, lots of characters, Plaza, that was a great experience. Oh, that was great because the kids got to get up and dance with Lilo and Stitch, Mickey.
Yeah.
So that was fun. And
That's
Garden
what
Grill,
did.
like
Breakfast.
Yeah, Jason mentioned Chef Mickey's, and I'm not a super fan of Chef Mickey's food, but I love the atmosphere inside.
Oh, I'm not either. Don't get me wrong.
But the atmosphere. Oh, and Hoop-de-Doo Review is a blast.
Oh gosh,
with
yes,
kids.
I totally forgot that one.
That is a complete blast with little kids, and the entertainers up on stage. They make sure if your kids are old enough, they will come over to your table and talk with your kids. And I mean, that was probably my favorite dinner show that we have done with our kiddos is Hoop-de-Doo Review. But yeah, like the food at Chef Mickey's is not good, but I love the atmosphere inside Contemporary Resort.
I think he saw me. Hey, little.
And I think as the years go by and you find out what the kids like and what you don't like and whether you want characters or no characters, I actually think our kids have gotten more into characters as they've gotten older, whereas when they were younger, they kind of shied away from them. Every time we go to Magic Kingdom, for years now, we have to go to Columbia Harbor House, and my other daughter has to get a tuna fish sandwich. That's just the thing that we have to do. And I don't know how that started, but you never know, what's going to start up with your kids as they go. If you're lucky enough, blessed enough to be able to go more than once, then, these little mini traditions kind of start happening and you get to go to the different place to eat. And now that our kids are older, transitioning to the older kids, they're, young adults. Their tastes obviously are much wider, and now I think we actually get more value if we go to a signature restaurant, for example, because we're not going to get signature chicken nuggets, which are basically the same as everywhere else, but they can actually experiment with their food choices and try something new.
Andy actually had pog juice for the first time at Ohana's breakfasts, and she loved it. So,
Awesome.
we love Ohana's. And if you do have a picky eater, and they want to do characters, but you're not quite sure about whether they're going to enjoy, you're not quite sure if they're going to enjoy whatever the food items are available at lunch or dinner, then breakfast is the way to go. For the most part, the meals are pretty standard. Certain restaurants might have a little something extra, maybe a little themed, but for the most part, you're not going to have any trouble getting something for any picky eater at a breakfast meal.
And I think even most of the restaurants, they'll somehow be able to make you plain pasta or plain chicken or something if you ask. It's particularly at the table service. So don't be afraid of trying something. If you want to try something, they'll find a way to work with your kids.
Yeah. And on the cruise, like they'll never bat an eye. Whatever you need, they'll find a way. With Andy, she's not a very picky eater. So I was able to pretty easily find things even at one on the kids menu. But there was one morning at breakfast, with me, she refused to eat her Mickey waffle. I got like one ear in there. She refused to eat anything. I mean, I had a ton of things. And I'd gotten some kind of hash meal, some kind of like eggs and hash brown kind of bowl. And then she wanted that. That's all she wanted. So I said, can I have a second bowl? Because I didn't get to eat any of it. And they brought a second bowl. I mean, really, they're just super easy.
Jason, do you have any?
I mean, everything that you guys have said is pretty accurate. I don't like Chef Mickey's food, but the kids seem to like it there. So yeah, you really got to decide whether, especially for character meals. I mean, they're expensive, and your kids are not as likely to eat as much because they're going to spend all that time waiting for the characters to come or whatever. So you just got to decide whether it's worth it to you. I mean, at Walt Disney World, you could spend half a day in the Magic Kingdom waiting in lines to meet characters. Or you could spend $40 on a character meal and do like 4 of them in a span of an hour. So it just depends on what you would rather do and where you'd rather spend your money.
We've always say it's how you spend your time is what matters.
Yeah.
Sometimes
That's right.
it's you choose. Yeah, sometimes it's you choose to spend a little bit more money on that character meal, and maybe you just decide to get one less gift, for each child.
I will say it's we haven't had a chance to go yet, but it's the first thing we're doing whenever things open up and we get back is Topolino's breakfast with her.
Oh, yeah.
I've heard nothing but great things
They look fabulous
about that character breakfast.
Yeah,
I have not tried that one.
Yeah, it's pretty new.
Yeah, it just opened in
This
December, right?
last
Yeah.
year. Yeah.
But I've heard like really good things about it.
Yeah, it's on
Well,
my
and it's
it's on my list of things to try when I get back.
And
It's
another
another
new dining that was really ended up really being really good food and a really fun experience was Artist Point, the Snow White dinner with Evil
Oh, yeah, I
Queen,
haven't done
Dopey, and
that.
Grumpy. That food, and it's only one table service if you're on the dining plan. That food is unbelievable. It was so good. And Snow White, Dopey, and Grumpy all come to your table, and then you get this cute little card and the evil queen's hearts. I mean, it was just in it. They beckon you to the queen, and she was so in character at
You're
that
talking about
dinner.
Artist Point?
Yeah, and
gosh.
that was an unbelievable experience. I can't believe it's only one table service.
That was the big thing. We thought it was going to be 2 table services. Just the quality of the food. We got prime rib. It was a roast, the 3-course meal.
Yeah, and they brought out 3 appetizers, 3 desserts, and it was
amazing.
I'm still speechless.
Yeah.
It was fantastic.
If you compare it to the prefix menu option at Be Our Guest, then it is a really good value because they are a 2 dining credit, and I don't want to say it's the same menu, but I would say the same quality.
But I think
of
it's
menu.
the same price if you're paying cash. It's very close.
And you get characters. And at Be Our Guest, you only get Beast. Whereas Artist Point, you have 4
it's not your table. He just walks on by, and you're like, "Bye, Beast."
Yeah. You have to line up in one of his rooms to go meet him. Which I'll say Be Our Guest is great for the atmosphere if you're a huge Beauty and the Beast fan. Or, I mean, it is pretty good food. But if you're wanting just for Beast, I would not suggest going to Be Our Guest. But if you're wanting that nice experience of atmosphere, then that's a good place to go.
Another one I'll say great for character interaction, and I think the food is better than most of the other buffets, is 1900 Park Fair is my favorite of the buffets.
Oh yeah.
Yep, I'd agree.
breakfast characters are good, but the dinner characters are really where it's at with Lady Tremaine, stepsisters. They are the most interactive and the most fun character interactions I've ever had.
They have Cinderella and the Prince as well, so it's not just Cinderella. If you go to Cinderella's Royal Table, obviously it's just Cinderella. That is a buffet. I will actually get up and take my child to the buffet and feed them, as opposed to my typical preference, which would be to just sit down and have the server serve me. But did we talk about Cinderella's Royal Table yet?
I think we have another question coming up about that.
That's a question. That's a question that we'll
Might as well just do it now.
Yeah, so we can move into that one. So between Dining with Princesses, would you choose Cinderella Castle or Akershus?
Well, first of all, let's show of hands. Who's done Cinderella's Table already?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
It's hard to justify premium, I think, for the Royal Table, but it's something you have to do once. Like if you're gonna go again and again, Akershus, the price is much more reasonable. It's the 1 credit versus 2, and I think the food's a little better. But on the other hand, there's nothing like the experience of going into the castle, and honestly, from my experience, I think the A-list princesses
They're great.
are at the castle as opposed to at Epcot.
The level of interaction with the princesses and even the regular cast members at Royal Table is just it's heightened. When you're at Akershus, you know, you're just another World Showcase tourist walking in off the street,
Yeah.
sitting down. They don't do Belle anymore, which they used to do a special.
Do they not do the bell? It's been a while since we ate there.
I don't think they do Belle anymore, which is a special
They
photo op
did in
right when you walk in.
September. Have they changed it since then?
I don't know. It's been a while since we've eaten there.
We'd have to verify.
Yeah.
Don't do the free photos anymore with Belle, that's for sure.
Yeah.
The ones that they
Well,
put
that
on
for
your
sure.
table. But she was still there for the photo op in September, but that could have changed since then.
Oh, no, that's much more recent than we've been there, so
Yeah,
we'll go
so
with
you
you
probably
on
know.
that.
But the fact that they don't do the extra photo anymore is kind of sad because our first family, our big family photo with that photo was kind of one of our cherished items. But aside from that, I think, do they give you a photo at Cinderella's Royal Table? I
No,
don't
but you
think
get
they
the
do.
wand or the
Yes.
sword.
Yep, you do get
Yes.
you get the swag.
The swag.
Mhm.
Yeah,
We
I
still
think
have
we
our wand and sword somewhere.
I think they're
yeah,
downstairs.
we do
Yeah.
somewhere in a baby box, I think.
Yeah.
But you hit the point pretty well. If you need to do Cinderella Castle at least one time, especially if you have a little girl. Going up the staircase alone is, even as an adult, it's like, oh my gosh, I'm walking up the staircase in Cinderella Castle. But as Rory, our daughter, gets older, and since she's done Cinderella Castle 3 times in her life, we're pretty set with Akershus now, I think. And another princess dining now that you can get for breakfast is Trattoria. And you get Rapunzel, Flynn, Ariel, and Eric. And so if you're okay sacrificing 3 princesses at breakfast, you can always go and eat at Trattoria. And that was pretty decent food too.
Well, it was decent for adults, I would say. Kids, it seemed to be a little bit more on the mature end versus, just regular breakfast
Mickey
items.
waffles.
Yeah, it seemed to be a little bit more mature in that sense. But yeah, that was a really good experience. Trattoria was with the Tangle characters and was a Little Mermaid as well.
Ariel and Eric.
Yeah. Another good option we had, breakfast.
Yeah, but we would choose Akershus now
Yeah.
for as far as quality goes.
And Ron, so the food, when we went in September it was better this trip in previous trips because I was almost ready just to say I'm done with Akershus this last trip, but it was better. I was actually surprised, and not to mention the pastry spread there as well too, of bagels and I guess the Norwegian variety there as well if you're into that thing.
And it's an easier reservation to get.
Do remind me, so someone in the chat did remind me, they do take your picture with Cinderella downstairs.
You do.
Yeah, there's like like you go in around a corner, you wait, then you go upstairs. Yeah.
But you
What I
don't get a
remember-
photo, right?
Yeah, I don't think you can photo.
No.
What I remember though is in that little room, you also see like Jacques and Gus
Yes. Yes.
teetling on some, I don't know, something. That was the one thing I took away from that. I was like, wait, Cindy, that this is great, but I was like, oh my God, Jacques and Gus are here.
Yes. And remind
Yeah,
me, so Akershus has the parade with the princesses. Does Cinderella Castle have the parade? Because I can't remember when the little girls walk around the dining area with them.
I don't remember that.
I
at all.
don't remember. We were the first seating for breakfast,
Yeah.
Yeah,
but they try
I
and
don't
rush
recall
you out of there a lot quicker.
Well,
Yeah.
I did hear that they recently made some changes in the way they do the seatings. Like this happened in the last 6 months, but I didn't get a whole lot of details about it because I was having difficulty finding reviews that explained it well. But I heard because of the way they changed the seatings that things are a little bit more rushed than maybe they used to be. But I can't imagine Yeah, but I can't imagine that they're rushing that much. I mean, they're bringing you plated meals. It can't be that
Yeah.
fast. So,
But I'm thinking now of the seating arrangement for Cinderella Castle previously, and I don't see how there could have been a parade of princesses that the little girls
yeah,
walk around with.
I
I'm
can't.
pretty sure that's just at Actors Shoes.
Yeah.
So that's another part that we like is they'll pull Rory up from the table and they try to get Nick, but he didn't want any part of it. And they'll walk them around the restaurant with the princesses.
we've talked a lot about princess related meals, but do we have a meal that we would recommend for little boys if they're really not into certain kinds of characters?
Any of the Fab Five meals is really all little boys have.
And
Like
Stitch.
Tusker
Right?
House.
Maybe that's not a,
Yeah,
yeah. Oh,
Stitch.
Tusker House, that's a good one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Tusker House. We've talked about Chef Mickey's. If he likes Pooh Bear and Friends, there's Crystal Palace.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to go through my list
Well,
here in my
if
head.
the
Isn't
Disney
1900
Junior,
Park Fair
that's
the early meal is like Peter Pan and Wendy
It's all
and
British
maybe
characters, yeah.
Mary Poppins or the Mad
Yeah,
Hatter and Alice.
Peter Pan and Wendy aren't there.
They
It's
changed
Mad
it.
Hatter, Alice, Mary
Pooh and
Poppins,
Tigger.
and Pooh Bear. Yeah, and Tigger.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's definitely kind of for everyone.
Is the
There's-
new Toy Story barbecue going to be a character meal? I'm not sure. Jason, do you know?
Yeah, Jason.
I don't know.
We haven't
If
heard
it-
anything
if it's not,
about
it's
that.
better.
Maybe we
They
should.
should.
pull up
I know
the
that at the Garden Grill there was Chip and Dale
Chippendale,
Chippendale.
and
That's a good
Mickey.
Mickey
And-
Pluto.
Pluto.
I
Yeah.
forget who else. Pluto
Yeah, Pluto. Yeah.
or Goofy.
That's
I
a
can't
good one.
remember now.
I think
But
it's
that
Mickey
was a
and
good
Pluto
one.
in their farmer outfits.
Yes, they're definitely in their. All of them are in
Chip
their
and
farmer
Dale are
outfits.
dressed up with little bandanas on, and
Yeah,
That's right.
yeah, that one's a good one.
It's not a character meal, but T-Rex for the little boys, I think.
True.
Nick,
I
he
remember-
loved dinosaurs at T-Rex.
That's all we did. I don't think he sat and ate
Yeah.
his meal. We just walked around and he was just
And looked.
enamored at every
Yeah.
dinosaur, all the sound effects there. Yeah, that was a really good choice for him, for kids who love dinosaurs.
That's good to know.
Yep.
One thing I did want to say is, at all the character meals, they don't give you the photo anymore. But if you have Photo Pass or the annual pass, they do have the Photo Pass photographers there to
Yes.
give you those. So
That's true.
Yes. So on this topic still, we had a lot of questions about dining. Are character meals worth it?
Yes.
Yes.
I
Depends on your
Yes.
family.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Depends
if you're a
on your
family that likes
yes.
characters. Yeah.
100% on the dining plan, though, you're going to be your best value all the time.
Yes,
Uh,
that too. Good point.
But the time savings alone, I usually think are worth them, especially if you really like seeing the characters in unique outfits. You're going to get a lot more of those at the character meals, with Tusker House being the safari and the farmer outfits at Garden. Like, you can go to multiple character meals with the same characters, but still get really unique photos every time.
The one thing I love so much about Chef Mickey's is the fact that, okay, my mind was, we went as adults for the first time, and I never totally understood the concept until I was there. I was like, oh my God, Ron, it's like we're meeting the chef. It's Chef is Mickey. It just like hit me like a bolt of
You've
lightning.
never gone before?
I just, no. And it was like, this makes so much more sense now. And then I was like, I love meeting the chef. So I understand now why so many kids and families build those memories there and why they enjoy it so much. It saddens me that Disney doesn't decide to just make a better meal, especially when you have Goofy's Kitchen out in California, which is definitely elevated in terms of food. But
Yeah.
I would still go to Chef Mickey's and just eat the basics. Maybe breakfast, I would say, because you can't really go super wrong with breakfast.
No. We always choose breakfast for character meals. And another good one, which Michael briefly mentioned, is at Hollywood and Vine for the younger kids if they're Disney Junior fans.
Yep.
It's Fancy
That's what I was
Nancy.
going to suggest for boys too. Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean,
Roadster Goofy.
depends on who's there.
Yeah.
Oh,
We see
It's
that in
always
our
changed
future.
over the years.
Yes.
But yeah, like years ago when there was Handy Manny and the little Einsteins, I mean, they were
And
all
JoJo
pretty
and
good for boys as
Turtle
well as
Line.
girls.
Yeah.
Yes.
Andy loves Mickey Mouse Clubhouse and Doc McStuffins. We just started
Yes,
watching
Doc's.
Vampirina.
Yeah.
Yep. Elena Bavalor. We watch it all. We watch it all.
Yeah, we still watch. Our 7-year-old still watches Disney Junior, so she still loves the character breakfast at Hollywood and Vine. And then they've also started the mini seasonal dining dinners at Hollywood and Vine as well. And so we went at Christmas, and they were all in their Christmas outfits. And I know they have a Halloween and a summer, so that was pretty good too for character dining.
I think it's worth mentioning, though, that it does get some of the least positive reviews when it comes to the quality of the food. So it is something to consider when you're deciding where you want to go and what you want to do with your meal plan.
It all depends on who you want to meet, is what it comes down to.
I agree. And if you're the kind of family also that really enjoy, isn't it like just basic Italian? I'm almost certain that's what it is at Hollywood and Vine.
No, it's more.
It's like Americana and pasta. Yeah. It's kind of difficult to categorize it, but you likely won't have issues with picky eaters there because it's like a lot of breads and pastas and things like that.
Yep. So yes, character meals are worth it, I think, if your kids are wanting to meet certain characters. All right. Okay, the next question that we got is is Bibbidi Boppity Boo, Bibbidi Boppity Boutique, really worth it? And should they bring their own dress instead of buying one there?
So does my opinion count on this
No,
one?
he doesn't get an opinion in this. So we have done Bibbidi Boppity Boutique twice with Rory. And Michael would say don't do it at all. But I say do it. The first time we went, it was at Cinderella Castle, and she was 4, and so that was 3 years ago, and that was when they had the super itchy costumes. And so I paid for the big deluxe package, and she got her Jasmine costume, and we had Raglan Road reservations for dinner afterwards. And by the time we got to Raglan Road, she was ready to take that thing off. So 3 years ago, I would have been like, yes, bring your own dress. But we took her in September, and they have updated all of their costumes, and they are no longer itchy, and they are actually very soft. And so the one at Disney, we went to Disney Springs for the second time, and it was in the morning, and she picked Jasmine again because they had changed the costume. And so that was our last day, and she wore it from the morning all the way until we got home that night, and we were on 2 different planes. So for experience, I would say to buy one of their dresses. It's a lot of fun for the girls because the little dressing room, they've updated both locations. And so when you go into the dressing room, especially at Disney Springs, I can't say that the mirror does this at Cinderella Castle, but at Disney Springs, when you walk into your dressing room, there's a floor-length mirror, and they actually have it to where the fairy godmother comes onto your mirror and talks to your little girl. And then she changes into her outfit, and they bring her out into her chair and do her hair. And that for Rory, especially as she's getting older, and that is still so magical to her, is being handed a brand new princess dress from the wardrobe. And if you pay for the shoes and getting the crown, I mean, that So yeah, I'm 100% on board with buying one of their packages.
I can refer you to someone who can give you a good home equity line of credit.
So, but what you're saying is there's an entertainment value and there's a memory making value to it. And it's really
Yeah.
about, and it might be the age that matters. And of course, the interest
Yeah.
level. If you have a child that doesn't seem to care a ton about princesses, maybe
Yeah.
you care more about princesses than they do, then something to consider.
Yes. Then, you know. And if they're little, I mean, if they're super little, like you can start at 3, they're not going to probably know the difference
Yeah.
between the
They might not get
wardrobe
as much
dress
out
or
of it.
but at Rory's age, and I would say from about 5 years old to 12 when they max out, I'd say if they're into princesses, it's probably really special for them to be handed that, you know,
Is it
authentic.
is it just the cruise line version of Bibbidi Bobbidi that has like multiple levels of dress you could buy, or did they do that at the parks too? I'm not really sure on that one because I know like there's
They
different price dresses at least on the
so
cruise line. They
yeah,
go
they
to
have
$600.
they have 3 levels. So the one that we get is like the basic. Well, actually, I would say there's 4 levels. So the cheapest level is just hair and makeup and your nails. Then there's a next level where you can get the Bibbidi Bobbidi t-shirt and tutu and the sash. And then the next level is the level we do, which is the authentic Disney store costumes. And then the next level is the Frozen package. And so you get the deluxe Elsa or the deluxe Anna costume. And then the next level, which Michael would divorce me if I did this because it's like $400, is you get like the super deluxe princess dresses. Like it's Aurora, Belle, Cinderella, and I want to say there's one more. But you can choose from those 4, and those are like the super, super nice dresses.
I think that was the first moment. So when I walked in with them, it was up on the wall, right? It was, I can't remember if it was Cinderella or something. I looked up there and I was like, hey, that's a really pretty dress. How much does that cost? $400.
That's why he doesn't get invited.
And then I just turned around and walked out immediately.
If you're going to do it, though, the one thing I will always tell people that ask is do it as early in the morning as possible.
That's what I was going to
So
Yes.
your child has the opportunity to wear it around the park.
Well, and to get photos,
That's
because
what-
I mean, you obviously want to get character photos with this whole, you know, get up, and I agree, you want to try and get as early as you can. And I think a lot of people will ask, is it worth doing it in the park as opposed to doing it at Disney Springs? I don't know. You're probably going
And
to have.
now the Floridian as well.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I forgot about the Grand Float. But you know, if you can get the morning at Grand Flow, it would make sense. But you know,
Yeah. Disney Springs, yeah, it wasn't as magical doing it at Disney Springs because then you're just at Disney Springs, and that was our last day. So I was like, well, I kind of just paid for this, and now we're leaving. But when we did it at Cinderella's Castle, it was at night. So we didn't really get the full day experience with her, but she wouldn't have lasted in that costume anyway. But I will say that it's more magical walking into Cinderella Castle to get a makeover than it is walking into an outlet at Disney Springs. And something
They
else
do the parade
they do
at
the
Springs, though,
parade.
don't they? They have the Princess Parade. All the kids who've been made up there, I've seen them walking them like around, like
they do, but it
Huh.
depends on the time of day that you have your appointment. Because if you don't want to stick around and wait for it, because
Yeah.
they wait till they have like enough of the kids done, and then they go do the parade.
yeah, it's early
Yeah,
afternoon. They walk them around the World of Disney building, like the outside. And I think if you get
Yeah.
it done early in the day, you could obviously come back. I don't know if they do it multiple times, but the two times I've seen it are just are early afternoon.
Yeah, I think we left before the parade
Well,
started.
remember now it's located where the old the bus transportation used to
Yeah.
be. It's on the other side of Disney Springs now, versus being in World of Disney where it used to be.
Yeah. Yeah, they did move it. But another thing that, and I can't speak to if Cinderella Castle does this now, but at Disney Springs afterwards, you have a photo op opportunity, and they will take your princess to this adorable little life-size girl carriage that's made to look like Cinderella's carriage, and they stand her in front of it, and you take pictures. And if you have PhotoPass, then that's a free. You have to buy it if you don't, but if you have PhotoPass, that's just automatically added onto your PhotoPass. And so I don't know if they do that at Cinderella Castle now. I know it's an add-on to the Disney Springs location, but that's something that would pull me back to Disney Springs to do Bibbidi Bobbidi Boutique if they didn't have that at Cinderella Castle.
Tea. Did we have a question about the tea at Grand Floridian? The story
Yes.
tea?
Mm-hmm.
Or is that a separate
Yes,
question?
it was. Have you ever tried the Tea Party with Sleeping Beauty? It is so expensive, but I think my daughter would like it. Is it worth it?
So
Have you guys tried
we
that?
haven't. Yeah, we haven't actually done it, but I've watched it. I asked them if I could stand and watch because we had tea just for afterwards. So they did let me watch. I have to say it was extremely magical, and I left saying, "Honey, like our first child better be a girl, and even if they're not, we're going to tea." So, but I've done the tea multiple times. Ron, doesn't like finger foods,
And I don't like tea.
He doesn't like tea. So I wouldn't expect Ron to take our daughter to do tea. But one of the things I was thinking about, because we were talking about this before, she's so young now, it's probably not worth it. But I would wait until that optimal time when I think she's really going to remember it. It's a very interactive experience. The kids get up and they dance and they sing songs, and the cast members and the princesses tell stories together, and the kids participate in the storytelling. So you want to make sure your child, yes, you want to make sure your child's of the age that's going to actually participate and not be too shy, and and really enjoy it and just get a lot out of it, because it is expensive.
It is expensive, and you do get a lot of swag though. There's
Mhm.
I think I don't know if it's the same, because I was just reading about the one they did do on the cruise ships. There's the doll they give you is exclusive to whatever location you do the tea at, I think.
Mhm.
And so if you really collect those things and you want that exclusive doll, it's the only way to get it. And I don't know how they go for on eBay, but maybe you can make some of your cost of it back if you really want to.
One of the things to remember too is they only require one adult. So you could have as many children and have one adult. You don't have to have like adult child, or they don't dictate anything like that. So if you
bring
want
a
to save the
child, you can pay for your second child to come if you want to bring your second one. Yeah,
Exactly.
We had it booked, the tea party booked for our last trip, but we ran out of time. But I do plan on taking Rory to that tea party. I don't know.
And she's probably old enough now to really get something good out of it. I think it looks to me like the kind of experience that I would have enjoyed at that age. I enjoyed princesses, so I would have gotten something out of it. But if I had a child who wasn't very interested in princesses, or was also a very shy child who didn't really love interacting with other children or strange adults, no matter how friendly the Disney cast members can be, then I would probably not spend the money. I'd probably just do the regular tea and bring my child and get them a basic child's menu related tea package, because what you're really paying for is the interaction, in my opinion. Although I guess if you add up the value of all of the swag you get, you certainly could make an argument for it. But you don't really know exactly what the swag is going to be until you get there. So
yeah, it's a prepay too. I feel like I should note that the tea party is a prepay, and so is Cinderella Castle, unless you're on the dining plan. They'll just hold it with your table credits. But yes. Yep, so that was our tea party question. All right, so I feel like this will be good for Jason because he loves Epcot. How do you make World Showcase interesting for children?
First, you go to the little kiosk across from France, and you get the Grand Marnier slushy, and you feed it to them.
That sounds.
Then everything's interesting for them. No, just kidding. Um, I, it's sometimes it's hard. Sometimes it's maybe better to avoid World Showcase with little kids. The Kid Cut stations are great, but that only lasts for half a day, and then you're kind of done with those. Um, you can make it as far as Mexico and go on Grand Fiesta tour, and then Norway and go on Frozen, and at that point you might want to just turn around and leave World Showcase. So that's it. It's there's not a lot there to do for kids. There's really not. Um,
But
It
they
is
did bring
improving.
so I mean, I'll go to Epcot 3 days out of a week at Walt Disney World. But if you're taking kids, Kid Cut's going to last for one of those days, and they're not going to want to go back. So, if you can somehow split up or do something else with the kids while you go enjoy World Showcase. I mean, the other thing is, people like to go for festivals or whatever, and the kids aren't going to go and eat the festival food. They're not going to be interested in most of the offerings at World Showcase, and that's just
And the
sort of the
festivals can
sad
get
fact of
really
it.
crowded. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The festivals can get really crowded. You're waiting in line for a long time. You're spending a lot of money for a very little bit of food. It's almost better to go to like the Lotus Blossom Cafe and get your kids something to eat there, and then you go walk around and do the festival. But it's hard to be a person that likes going to Epcot for multiple days on every trip, and taking little kids. It doesn't work too well.
I mean, for not very little kids, particularly during the festivals, and once they have it up and running for the update, the scavenger hunts that they have around World Showcase are probably a good way to engage them. They're just in the middle of converting the Phineas and Ferb to a DuckTales scavenger hunt, and each of the festivals has some sort of scavenger hunt where you're finding either Remy or Spike the Bee, or I forget what the Christmas one. I think it's an ornament hunt. There's a map you buy that's a nominal price. It's like $6-7, and the kids get something out of it. But you don't really need to buy that. You can still make the game out of them finding it, and that's a good way to engage them beyond just the Kid Cut. And also, they still sell passports so the kids can go get that stamped, and then the cast members do engage with the kids when they get them stamped, so they could, talk a little bit about their country. With Remy coming into France, you're going to have less of a gap going around, and there are plenty of characters
There's
scattered
few,
around.
but the character schedule can sometimes be limited.
Sorry, I was going to say Epcot's the only place you can really meet Mulan.
Yes, and that's the thing. There are definitely characters that are unique, but the character schedules are way more limited than the other parks.
Yes.
So you have to really be vigilant on the schedule. And you kind of have to know, is my child going to last? Are they going to make it till this? To be able to make it to these scheduled events. And then the other thing, too, is that Epcot's a lot of walking. And if you have kids that are not stroller age, you have to really consider that. If they're bored and it's hot and they're at the age where they don't want to be adventurous with their food, it could be quite uncomfortable for all involved. So... But you also have some children that really do love countries and learning and shopping and eating. So for those rare children, then World Showcase might be your thing. We know people whose kids love World Showcase, but I would say more often, most of the kids want to be doing things that are more interactive.
And something I will note, if you're looking for dining table services in Epcot, our kids have a blast at Beer Garden because they can go down to the stage area and dance with the band. And that's something that we do.
That's very
We
true.
skipped it last trip, we did Les Cellier, which is, I would not suggest that with kids. That was a
Yeah.
nightmare. But yeah, beer garden's a ton of fun for them for table service at Epcot and World
We
Showcase.
love the beer garden as well because of the entertainment. I feel like if you're getting dinner and a show, I feel like that's what you're paying for at Disney.
Yeah.
So it makes sense to me. And I'm glad to hear that your kids enjoy it, because I've always wondered, if I as an adult am just enjoying it because, it's geared towards my age group, or are kids getting it? But I'm glad to hear kids are getting it. So,
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It's a lot of fun for them.
Don't do the first reservation of the day. We learned the band. By the time you're done eating, the band's still not on.
it's true.
It's a good note. We always shoot for 6:30 around that time. 6 or 6:30.
Oh,
We usually do it for lunch.
yeah.
We usually do our table service meals for lunch, just because it's a good break, we think, in the day instead of going back to the resorts. Particularly now with her taking a nap, like she'll do a quick thing and then she'll fall asleep in the stroller again right there. So that's a good nap time. Is why we usually do the lunchtime for table service.
But something to keep in mind too is if your children are on a really rigid eating schedule, if you know you're going to want to do these meal reservations, you've got to book them early. I mean, you need to know the midnight before the reservation window opens, right? And then you need to start booking, and then you need to be looking and constantly looking, or having your travel agent constantly looking for you to find those bookings at the times that are the best for you.
And if your kid has to eat at 5 sharp, if your kid has to eat at 5 sharp, make that reservation for at least 4:45. So you have that, because you're always going to be seated a little late, and this way they can at least get something out to you by that point.
Yep.
And I just again would say it depends, and it depends on the age the kids are at too. I know even today, I think a certain of our kids tolerate my love of Epcot, and other kids actually come along with me and love Epcot, or at least parts of Epcot. So it depends. I mean, there is some, some kids are curious even at a very young age, and they'll spend hours watching, well, not anymore, but they'll spend hours watching the illumination barges move around when they get set up every day, and kind of ignore everything else. So it really, it depends. Our 4 kids probably range the spectrum from being dragged into Epcot to sometimes having to be dragged out of Epcot. So it depends.
That's kind of how our family was. We were all kind of all over the spectrum in terms of what our level of enjoyment was. But I'll say this, because we both were children going to the parks. I think our love for Epcot grew as we went more and more, because we went with our parents, and we were building more and more memories. So I would caution you from literally removing it from your concept of what your trip is going to look like, just because you certainly could have some really great memories there, and you might find one day your kids are preteens and they're ready for something a little bit more different. So,
but I also just say Epcot advice is not going to last very long, because that park is about to be flipped on its head. So
yeah, Epcot was my first park, and so I was Rory's age. I was 7 when we first went, and I still have the best memories of empty Epcot as a little girl. Back before. And I mean, even back when I was a kid, that age, characters did roam around. And so we were walking through Epcot, and there was Belle and Beast just roaming Epcot. And that was my first character interaction, was there at Epcot. But yeah, I would echo Ron in cautioning against listening to advice about Epcot now versus what it's going to be. All right. Okay, so back to dinner reservations. This was a very popular question. we kind of talked about this a little bit, but this is a more specific age question. So, with a 3-month old, do you think they should bother with character dining?
I would.
It,
Well, it depends on the restaurant. So if you have a 3-month old, right, you're probably going to be keeping them in the bucket seat, during your meal because they can't sit in a high chair. So you just want to ensure that whatever restaurant you're going to is going to have a comfortable way for you to be able to put your child's bucket seat either near you or, seated or something.
and at that age, they're probably young enough that they're still before they're going to get scared of the characters.
Mm-hmm.
What we noticed with Andy on the 2 trips when she was 6 and 9 months, no problem with the fur characters.
Yeah.
Cruise line, we started having the problems with Mickey, Minnie, and all them.
Oh, yeah.
Princesses and human fur characters like Doc McStuffins and
She did great with Fancy Nancy and Doc McStuffins. Even though their heads are massive, their heads look like heads. And, she watches those shows, so she seemed to be pretty familiar. But even though she's a huge fan, I mean, she goes to her Mickey dolls and she knows it's Mickey. But she, for whatever reason, on the cruise had a lot of difficulty with the animal-based characters that weren't human-like. So,
and from experience with 3 nieces and 3 younger sisters, it's about that year age when they start freaking out at things.
mm-hmm.
When they're younger, they could do a little better because they don't realize it's scary.
They just sit there. So maybe they laugh or giggle or, I don't know, take a poo. There's really, that's at the 3-month, there's not a whole lot that you can probably, do. So to be honest, let's say if you have a 3-month-old and you've done a whole day at the parks and you're already exhausted as a parent because you stayed up all night, I think my nice Disney trip would include a character meal for me. That's my meal, and my 3-month-old's going to sit there while I enjoy some character interaction, and I attempt to drink an entire carafe of coffee.
I agree with you. Yeah, it's going to be more about the parents and their interaction with the characters, unless obviously you have more children, like we have another daughter who obviously we're going to do it, but I mean it doesn't hurt anything. I mean they're only going to see more and hear more and be more embedded into their memory, and especially as many trips as we've gone on. I'm sure there's probably a speck of memory in there somewhere with both of our kids. But yeah, it's no harm there.
And some of our favorite pictures are of Rory asleep at Hollywood and Vine as a 3-month-old with Jake next to her stroller, posing with her as she's sleeping. And I mean, those are things that we're gonna look. We have one framed in our house. I mean, that's something that we're gonna look back on forever. Is that memory?
That's so funny.
So I would say,
the on the cruises, the last night they do like a crazy character fest, and it's usually late. Remember that last night, and it was like 10
the farewell.
Yeah, the farewell party, and it was about 10 o'clock ish by the time that all the characters were coming out, and you had to rush to get into lines to see as many as you could. Andy fell asleep like right in the beginning. So most of our photos from that, the ones that she was awake, she was grumpy. She was like, because, she just woken up, or she was asleep. And then we had the characters pretend to be asleep with her. So like all of those photos are like the cutest ever. She's in her stroller and she's like, oh. And they're like, so I agree. The sleeping photos are totally worth it.
yeah, for sure. Kind of along the character lines and dining, do you think buying autograph books are necessary?
Depends on your
Do
child.
autograph
I can
books?
actually answer that one.
Yeah.
Can you?
We so yeah, because years ago my kids were of an age where they wanted to try these autograph books because they saw a bunch of other kids have them. And what we did, instead of the autograph books, we bought colored index card stock. Like index cards are a little bigger. And then we bought clipboards, like the hard clipboards that were that small size too. And so what we could do is, you take a card, and you could color coordinate the index card to the princess that was signing it or the character that was signing it. Then you would take it on the clipboard and they would sign it. And then you could take the card and mommy could put it in her purse and not get it all messed up. And when you get home, instead of having an autograph book, then you can scrapbook it with the photos from the character interaction and everything else. And it made a much nicer keepsake than just a book with a bunch of signatures in it that you really aren't going to look at. So, notwithstanding the fact that it saved a lot of money, I think it was a much better way to collect autographs than one of the autograph books that they sell in the parks.
There's a couple other recommendations I know people do. One I think is really cool is the the photograph matte frames. People bring those a lot. I know some people used to do like pillowcases. I think they still do that, but they won't sign clothing articles anymore, I think is one of the things. I think a hat they'll sign, but like not a t-shirt. So things where multiple characters can sign is a really good thing, so you don't have the book and you can display it easier. The one thing with those, though, is you have to be sure the cross studios cannot sign on the same surface is the rule. So I think Disney and Pixar can sign on the same things, but if you want to get like, if you're in California and you want to get Spider-Man's signature and Mickey's signature and Kylo Ren's signature, you need 3 separate items to sign. They will not sign on those same things.
Wow, I never knew that.
I didn't know that either. Crazy.
Wow.
It's even though they're all the same company, there's a weird licensing agreement.
I was about to ask if it was something to do with that. Oh.
I know that's particularly in the cruise line. Maybe you can get away with it if they don't notice quickly, especially if they have a head or a mask on. They might not notice, but the official rule is cross-studio things have to be on separate pages of a book or separate items. It could be one side of the frame versus the other, but what's the point of that?
That kind of makes sense, because I remember times where they would sort of politely ask you to flip the page. And I was always like, maybe they just didn't want to be, on the same page. But that makes sense.
Well, on the books, they have very big signatures. It's very rough, is why they don't want to put multiple on the same page.
That makes sense too.
That's interesting. I never knew.
Books are cute and handy, but as Jason said, it's not the best way to display it. So there's a lot of great creative options out there that, other than the ones we've mentioned, that look on Etsy or other places for that have well-priced options that are better keepsakes. I mean, Laurel still has a bunch of hers.
I do. I have an autograph book from my childhood. I found it at my mom's house. Yeah.
We have all of the autograph books when I was little.
See? Well, I saved it. It's like 25 years old or something. And it's nice to have in my keepsake collection of things. I looked at it a couple of times since, but only because it does remind me nostalgically of the experiences going to the parks with my parents and getting in line to see these characters.
When we were kids, you could fill up 2 books full of autographs.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. My favorite photo of my dad, I actually have I have a young memory of about 4.5 or 5-ish. And my first memory of going to see a character with my dad like that. And I have a photo of it and it's on our wall. And it's like one of those candid shots where my dad's like, hey, like here's Mickey. And it's like me and my twin sister. And we're seeing Mickey for the first time and we're touching him. And it's it's like one of those and we're holding the book so to get our autographs. So it's one of those, it just gives me those nice warm fuzzy feelings.
I was never a character person as a kid, so I don't have those. I had some trauma when I was at the Empress Lily, which was the old dining where all the character dining was, when they accidentally dumped a tray of cloches on my head.
Oh my!
Oh.
That does sound
Yeah, I was
traumatic.
never big into the autographs or anything when I was a kid, so I have pictures, character pictures, but not autographs.
Something that
I
we
would-
did with Rory is so one year we took her, we got a bunch of pictures with her and the characters. We had all of those printed, and the next time we took her, we had the characters sign them with Sharpies. So that was
Oh, the pictures
something
themselves.
that
That's right.
we did instead
That's
of
good.
autograph books.
That's a good idea.
And that way she can have those. Mostly princesses was her thing, but that's another idea. So let's see, we've got a couple questions left. Signature restaurants in general, are they child friendly?
They're not going to kick you out. I wouldn't always recommend them, and if I do recommend them, go to the first seating right when they open. Don't go during like the peak times at the signatures are a little later. I'd say more towards like the 8 than the 6, and you're less likely to annoy in the parks. Any of the yeah, definitely, but like I wouldn't exactly plan on taking a kid to Flying Fish at like 8 o'clock at night.
Oh yeah, no. And something to keep in mind too is the menu. I mean, if you have an adventure, if your child is an adventurous eater, again, you know, it might be worth it. That might be worth your time and your money. But you know, if they're not, I can't see why. I just can't see why you'd do it.
Yeah, I went to the Hollywood Brown Derby for the first time a couple years ago. Actually, during one of our events, the Hollywood Studios in 2018, and there was nothing on that menu that my kids would have tried. Not a thing.
And that's like the one signature I would say maybe you could do, and yeah, I guess not.
Yeah, and I mean, even as an adult, but I'm kind of a picky eater, but even as an adult looking through the menu, I'm like, I mean, this is a really diverse kind of menu. Like, you need to have a pretty seasoned palate to want to try some of this stuff. And even the atmosphere is great as an adult, but kids are not going to appreciate the atmosphere as signature dining location.
Your guest would be fine, just because it's just signature to try and deter people from taking that reservation. Honestly,
yeah, I forgot.
But the resort ones, I think, are definitely a little tougher to say to bring kids to. I mean, I've seen kids every time we've been to them, but they're few and far between, and usually a little older, and they're like young teen to preteen area rather than 5 or 6.
Mm-hmm. All right. So we have one question left, and it's about Disneyland. And it says, what is there for kids to do in Disneyland because it seems so small?
Oh my goodness.
What
is
isn't there to do for kids?
That I say, you have clearly never been to Disneyland because it is all about kids.
Well, I think this is a common misconception.
Like a whole little city.
Yeah, I think that a lot of people have absolutely no clue what's happening at Disneyland. And maybe because they've just been so immersed in Disney World that they never thought that they needed to go. Maybe they say, oh, well, it's the same. Why do I go? Or it's not the same. Why would I go? But
more dark rides in Fantasyland, more stuff to do. I mean,
there's more live entertainment. There's more snack items. There's more variety in
more
food.
Characters walking around. Yeah. California Adventure is a different story, I'd say.
Yeah.
That took us a while to get going in DCA. But once we got to Pixar Pier, I mean, that was like a dream come true for our kids. I mean, we stayed in there the majority
Cars Land
of
is
the
really
day.
good. Yeah, I was just going to say.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Our son fell in love with Cars Land.
We fell in love with Cars Land. I mean,
it's the most immersive.
I think we both say that is our favorite part of a Disney park is Cars Land. It's like, this is what we can accomplish, you guys. Why aren't we replicating this elsewhere?
We've said the same
Toy
thing.
Story Land looks like a joke compared to Cars Land.
No, I couldn't agree with you more. I think that, like I said before, Disneyland, there are definitely pros and cons, but the fact that there's way less foot traffic, you're not having to go back and forth and doubling back through the hub the way you would at Disney World's Magic Kingdom. It's crowded, but even though we went during summer times, I didn't feel like it was nearly as crowded as it sometimes seems in Fantasyland at Magic Kingdom when like you're packed in like sardines. And like I said, the variety of foods, you can get cheaper foods in a wider variety without having to feel like you need to go to these more expensive sit-down restaurants to get like a higher quality meal. And just like I said, the convenience factor of not having to deal with public transportation when you're dealing with strollers and baby bags, and just can't beat it.
No. So, I feel like there's so much to do in Disneyland for kids that we couldn't even list everything there is to do for kids. Like I said, we got back a month ago and our kids have talked about it every single day, that they can't wait to go back to Disneyland.
And we're talking about...
No, go ahead.
We were more, Disney World at least once, twice a year or more, and Disneyland every 3-4 years. But now we're looking at kind of, because we have to fly to both either way, so we're just like, might as well, Disneyland might come up more as a common thing, especially when she's very young.
Oh, yeah. Anything I can do to not have to deal with a bus.
And we planned Disneyland within a couple weeks, and it was a spur of the moment trip. We're like, this is going to be a one and done. Like, we just want to say we went, get it over with. I'm not going to like Disneyland. We're Disney World people. And now we're like, okay, so our next trip to Disneyland will be as soon as it opens. We can wait to go to Disney World. Like, we are absolutely in love with Disneyland.
Oh, yeah. We were in the exact same boat. And then we went for D23, our first trip to Disneyland. Was it 5-6 years ago?
I had gone in 95, 04, 2015, and then we went last year with Andy. And so I was going about every 10 years until Andy, and then we're like, okay, well, it's going to be a lot more common then.
Oh, yeah. And the nice thing about Disneyland, too, is that if you need to do a shorter trip, Disney World is kind of designed for you to spend, 4, 5, 6 days at least, maybe 7 or more. Yeah. But Disneyland, if you know you only have a few days off, just go to Disneyland. Get it all in.
And it's a lot bigger than you think. DCA is pretty much Radiator Springs, Pixar Pier. You got Little Mermaid. That's pretty much DCA. But Disneyland, you think it's small, but it's a lot bigger when you're in there. Like, it's going to take longer to get through it than you think you would. So if you're going to do Disneyland, I would suggest, take a couple days to do Disneyland and then pick a day to do DCA.
I agree with that, actually. It could take you at least 2 days to Disneyland. This is kind of what I was saying before. There's just so many things. There's so many nooks and crannies. They've literally jam-packed every corner of that park with something to entertain you, whether it's a food or something that's a live entertainment or some kind of photo op or a ride or, whatever. Anything.
There's, with only 2 parks, there's compared to 4, there's still, I think, 85 to 90% of the number of attractions between those 2 parks as compared to World.
Yeah. Oh, really? So the number of attractions is
actually
not that
much
far off.
closer. Yeah. Wow. That's a good article idea. I'll take a look into that.
Yeah. You go for it. All right. So I think we need to wrap this up because we've hit our time mark, guys. We did so good. We ended up with a lot more questions. I was worried we would only get a couple, but we had a ton of submissions. So I guess I'll close this out by saying thank you for coming on and talking to me about, being parents and traveling with your kids. And thank you to everyone who tuned in to watch and chat with us. And yeah, if you guys liked it, make sure to let us know and we'll try and get another one of these together, especially during quarantine and park closures.
Yeah, reach out to any of us. I'm Ron at WDWNT. I think everybody else's email is a kind of similar thing that's on the website. Yep. So reach out to us if you have any more questions, and we'd love to do this again.
Yep. And Jason, don't we have a contest going on right now?
We do. While everyone's stuck at home on quarantine, we have a contest. It's a make your own nighttime spectacular at home contest. You can mimic a Disney nighttime spectacular of your choosing and film it and post it on YouTube and submit it. And the winner will win fabulous prizes. We did a contest like this with a create your own pre-show at home, and it was really great. We had some amazing submissions, and it was a lot of fun. So now we're doing it with nighttime spectaculars. Check it out at WDWNT.com. And if you have any questions, you can email us. I'm Jason at WDWNT.com. Yeah, should be a lot of fun. So stay tuned.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much.
Good job. It was fun.
Thank you.
Good night, everybody.
Yeah.
Yep.
Have a good night.
Good night.
Good night.